Welcome to Blooming Wildwood Homestead. Today we are talking about some tips for growing productive raspberries. Raspberries are probably one of the easiest types of berries to grow. There is a bit of setup involved and there is a little bit of maintenance that occurs, but overall they aren't super time consuming. When it comes to raspberries and thinking about how you're going to set up your berries, I like to consider the end before I get started with the rest of it. When I'm talking about considering the end first, I'm really talking about considering what kind of a setup you're going to want for containing your raspberries. Raspberry canes grow taller, and once they are bearing fruit, it's going to make them top heavy, and you have to consider how you're going to manage those canes and control them so that they can be very productive. Some people, if they just have a few raspberry plants, prefer to plant the raspberry and put in a stake so they can tie the raspberry bushes up to the stake. And if you're just going for 2 or 3 berry plants, that might be a great option for you to kind of get started. If you're looking for something a little bit larger scale and you're considering putting in a raspberry row, you might want to consider some type of trellising system that's just going to make things pretty easy for you in the future. Let me show you what I have going on here. Now, this was already established when I moved in here, but I had a very similar type of setup at my urban location. So I know this can work both on a larger plot or a larger area, and it also can work in a smaller area, and I'll show you some examples of both. So with this trellising system, you can see here we've got an end pole, and then there are 3 rungs that go down the pole, starting near the bottom, one a little bit further up, probably about 1.5 feet, 2 feet, and then one about the same distance from that. The reason why you're going to want 3 is because as the berries are growing and developing, they're not going to stay if you just put the taller level on there. They really do need the lower level so that you can really tuck them in and keep them contained the way that you want them. And then out from each level, you can see that we've got this little guy here, and then the wire's going to string through all the way down. Now, the reason why you might want something like this on the end of your wire is because over time your wire is going to loosen and sag a bit, as you can see it's kind of doing right now. And so you might want to come back through, tighten this up, and that's going to make your wire nice and taut. The beauty of this type of a setup is that it really does keep the berry plants contained. So as they're growing, I usually tuck them in at the bottom, and then I can keep tucking them in as they get taller along the way. Here's an example of one of the raspberries that is outside of the boundary. It's in 2 of the wires, but it's not in the 3rd. It's grown since I was handling it last. So I can just gently tuck that in there, and now it's in great shape and good to go. Down a little bit further, this is the next pole, and again it's got that cross brace on it, and the wire is just going through that little metal tack to keep it secure there and in place. Now, these berries are put straight into the ground. At my urban location, I did have them in a raised bed. It was about 2 feet across, and I ran this type of trellising system at both ends of the bed, and then I think I had one kind of in the middle, and it was perfect for supporting my berry plants. Raspberries do really well in full sun. It's okay if they have some partial shade, but they are definitely going to really enjoy a sunny location. Once you have your location and set up, you want to think about which variety of raspberry you want to grow. Part of that's going to depend on your climate. You want to find a variety that's going to be conducive to your particular climate. In addition to finding a variety that's going to be conducive to your growing area, you also want to think about which type you're going to want. There are some varieties of raspberry that are summer bearing, meaning that they're going to just have a crop produced in the summer, and then there are some raspberries that are ever bearing where they're going to produce a smaller crop kind of July-ish, and they'll have a larger crop moving into September. So it really depends on what you like. The benefit of having everbearing is just that you're going to have an extended growing season, and that's something that I really enjoy, being able to have some in the summer as well as kind of through into the fall time. It just stretches things out a little bit and is nice. You might want to have some of each. Maybe you want to have a few summer bearing and a few everbearing and really meet your raspberry growing needs. Now that you have a trellising system or some way that you're going to keep them contained, you have figured out which varieties that you want to buy, the next step is going to be to get your raspberries. And there are a couple of ways that you can do this. One way would be to go ahead and purchase some bare root raspberries from the nursery. They are probably in stock right now, depending on where you live, as spring is a great time to go ahead and get those in the ground if you are starting a brand new raspberry patch. The second thing that you can do is see if you have some friends that have raspberries, and if they already have some pre-established raspberry plants, you might be able to get some of their extras so that you can start your own bed. And let me show you what I mean. Once you have raspberries established, many of them are going to send out little runners. This particular one is coming all the way from this raspberry bed. I really worked earlier this spring on trying to get the weeds down in here. This has been something that has been problematic for this berry patch. And so I have put down some fabric underneath some of this. I've put some cardboard underneath some of this, and I've really mulched pretty heavily. So a lot of the newer plants are not coming up in the aisle as they have in the past. The beautiful thing about raspberries is that they do reproduce really well. You're gonna get some of these little plants out and about. The bad thing about raspberries is that they produce really well. So last year I had raspberry plants all through this area, and it's hard for me sometimes to take out plants that I know are young and in good shape. But my dad has really helped me with this. If they are not in the row where they're supposed to be, like these new little plants are, they're a weed. So anything that's cropping up in my aisleway is a weed. If you know somebody with raspberries, they probably have some new plants cropping up in the aisleway that they don't want there, and would be happy to dig those up and give those to you for transplanting purposes so they don't have to throw them out, because that is so hard. Now that you have your raspberries, you're ready to go ahead and plant them. You're going to want to space your original plants about 2 to 3 feet apart. To plant your raspberries, you're going to want to dig the hole deep enough that you're going to be able to get the roots spread out in the hole. So you want it to be deep enough that it's going to do that. Then after you're finished, you'll want to put down some type of mulch. So I have used kind of a combination of things. This year I am using the bark here, and that's worked really well just because I needed a larger amount and was able to get it by the truckload. At my urban location where I had a smaller row, I took some sawdust wood shavings from somebody who was working in a wood shop, and I was able to put those shavings around the base of the raspberries, and that was a great mulch. The idea with the mulch is to try and keep the weeds down. Like I said, it's worked really well in the aisle. I've got some buttercup that is a little bit on the stubborn side here, and so I need to come back through and dig up some of those weeds, just because I don't want the raspberries to have to compete with any type of weed for nutrition, for water, for space. Whatever I can do to keep those items at bay is going to help my raspberry plants to grow the best that they can. After all of the work that you put into establishing your raspberry patch, then it's just time to watch them grow and flourish. You probably won't get much in the line of fruit your first year. When we're talking about berries or orchard, these are really long-term items. They're not something that you're going to see huge benefits from the first year. You might get enough for a little bit of fresh eating, and that is a great way to inspire you to continue on with your bed. But don't be expecting enough that you're going to make raspberry jam your very first year unless you're getting a ton of plants. I hope this video was helpful, and I hope some of these tips will inspire you to get started with raspberries. They really are a great berry to get started with, and so versatile, so many things you can do with it. If I forgot something, or if you still have questions about something, please ask in the comments down below, and we will try to get that answered for you. And let me know if you're going to go ahead and start growing some raspberries this year. If this video was helpful to you, don't forget to like, and we would love to have you subscribe and become part of our community here at Blooming Wildwood Homestead. Until next time, bye everyone.